The great thing about losing a preseason match is we can just focus on transfers. This is the ArsenalVision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, the Blackman Twitter anchor. Hello, everybody. I am coping with, or somewhat coping with, or probably not at all coping with, if you ask my wife, some illness and some medical situations that have taken over in the wake of me living a lifestyle my body does not approve of while in LA. So bear with me today. I certainly apologize for that. I will be off to see the doctor and get put right just as soon as I'm done recording this. But today we are going to talk about Arsenal losing a preseason game, which, I mean, I think we all agree that means absolutely nothing. Hooray. But there are things in the game that I think mean something, and we do want to analyze those. So we will analyze those. We're going to talk a little bit about rumors of Eddie Nketiah to Marseille. Mikel Merino rumors will be big on the agenda today. We might touch on Calafiori, but let's be honest. We did a scouting video. We did a player profile. We did multiple podcasts about him. At this point, I don't know that we have much to say about him other than he continues to be quite handsome. Aside from that, very little else to say. Hope everyone who was out in Philly had a great time. Looked like a good time had by all. So definitely a little bit of the FOMO there. But as I mentioned, my body breaking down just from one city of the tour. Don't know how Andrew and James do it, but they do it because they're the pros. And I am clearly more ready for a minor league kind of appearance. Anyway, we did do an instant reaction last night. You can catch that. That's now up on audio and video. And we've got some more Patreon stuff coming for you shortly. But before we do that, by the way, there is a Mikel Merino scouting video that we did a while back, so you can check that out over there too. But now that that's out of the way, we can introduce the man you are actually here to listen to. His name is Clive. You can find him on Twitter, Clive BFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
So, how are you, my friend?
I'm better than you, that's for sure.
Well, that's a low bar, and you are limboing under it.
Better than you. The fact that old man Clive is in better shape than Elliot is it's not a good thing, right? So there you go.
Just need my hair to fall out, and then everything will have gone to pot for me. It's the last thing I can cling to, and I will super glue it on if needs be. Well, look, let's do the game first, then we can do Mikel Merino stuff, because I think the Mikel Merino stuff will fit into some of the issues in the game. And Mikel Arteta did put out a slightly more senior team. Ethan Nwaneri and Miles Lewis Skelly, who have impressed this summer, did not start. They did come on, and I think they did play well, but it was a little more of a senior-looking team. Calafiori, not ready to play. Timber rested, thankfully. Obviously, when he was not included in the squad, I think there were some worries, but it was just rest, which makes sense as he ramps up his recovery. So I thought this was a really interesting game to observe where we're going to start to think about the strengths of this team, which we know, but also what are the potential vulnerabilities of this team. It is really hard to analyze Arsenal right now because I want to be very clear about something, Clive. There are weaknesses in this team. There are flaws in this team. It is important to do critical analysis of this team. But even at its worst flawed moment, this team is better than 95% of the teams in the world, right? Mm-hmm. The thing about this team is it's trying to accomplish something that the club has never done. 93, 94, 95 points. It's trying to win the Champions League. And so the critical analysis isn't, are we bad? The critical analysis is, are there vulnerabilities that could lead to this team not achieving the outrageously lofty goals it has? And I think this game gave us just a few additional data points in terms of that. So let's just start off with what you made of the group that he put out there and the opening few minutes where I think Liverpool looked bad. They were on the back foot. I think we pushed them back and looked good, but you could see where the vulnerability was. And Mohamed Salah was certainly licking his lips, observing his chance to go after Zinchenko on the left.
Yeah, so let's focus on what we're trying to achieve first. Take it one by one. Mm-hmm. What we're trying to achieve. So the number one thing we're trying to achieve is to get players fit and hopefully get them off the pitch before they're injured, because that's really important. So things like Havertz in midfield and Jesus up front, that's important to get minutes into those two players and keep their minutes going upwards. Things like Kivior playing right centre-back to make sure we don't put too many minutes into Timber is really important, right? So we are ramping people up. So when you see people in certain positions, like Ben White probably had too many minutes. He probably showed a little bit in the game. Because Tomiyasu hasn't been here, we don't want to risk Timber. So what do? We overburden Ben White. He's once had the rest over the summer, and he gives a 6 out of 10 performance. Who cares? Because we saw him, didn't we? And mate, he's like a machine, right? So
He was a bit moody, wasn't he?
yeah,
Had a few kicks out, and just
I
looked
don't
really
honestly don't care.
annoyed to have to play football last night.
I'm annoyed that I'm still here. I want to go home. Let me go home now. It feels like that. I've had enough of this playing all the time because everyone's injured and I have to go and do the jobs of many people. Let me go home. Not interested.
I will tell you, the summer humidity in Philadelphia will put you in a bad mood. So I can definitely identify with that.
So not interested in that. And so you have to accept, Elliot, that we're just trying to put minutes into people. And some of the balances are just not there. But don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. And then most people walk into a room and they say, oh, who's playing well, who's not playing well. But then you have to ask yourself why we're not playing well. And to me, it was really, really clear, and apologies if it's really, really clear to everyone else as well. Arsenal do not play football like this. We do not play football that's not compact. And straight away, we're not compact. Nothing to see here. Everything else you're now judging is based on a pitch that is way bigger than what we normally play in. So you have to judge differently. And you ask yourself, why are we not compact? Why are we not compact? I haven't got the pass combinations, but the amount of passes that Vieira played back to our goalkeeper, which is what we normally do, but we're normally quite good for distribution back there. Not a critique on the goalkeeper. He has strengths, but David Raya distribution is not maybe one of them. And so he's quite basic in distribution. So we pull people onto us. We pulled on pressure. Our forwards were not maybe as fit to squeeze the space. And our wide men, I thought, were incredibly disappointing how they didn't tuck in to squeeze the space, right? Particularly, and it's interesting they both got clipped at half time. So it's about looking at the game properly, not looking at the last action. Don't look at Nelson's run and cross and say, oh, he played well. That's rubbish. Stand there, watch the game again, and watch how Tsimikas bullied him after that run. Didn't let him turn. He didn't have the brains running behind. That's a problem, because that's a problem of understanding the contest that you're in, regardless of pre-season or not. But who knows what I know, Elliot? He could be having a move next week. Why is he going to sprint into a corner and do his hamstring? Do you see what I mean? And so I think the construct to the game, what you're seeing, is really a difficult one. So I almost think the players are in pre-season. Well, I've got to be honest with you, some of the analysis I see on Twitter is also some of the fans are in pre-season, and they're not looking at it. They're looking at it from a game we end of last season, and it's not that. It's not that. This is an exercise to get fit, and then look at the players from that basis.
Yeah, I think one thing about teams that play positional football and teams that play in a structure that requires coordination is when you have a very changed team and a team at different stages of preparation, it's not going to look like itself. And it can be easy to think that a certain individual is not completing the action properly that they should, because actually the whole coordination is off. I do want to ask you about Thomas Partey. I think this is an interesting conversation because to me, we feel pretty good about Declan Rice, I think. Fair to say? Mm-hmm. We feel about Martin Odegaard. I think we're curious what the third midfielder will be. Now, a lot of times last season at our best, it was Jorginho. And Thomas Partey came in and played that third midfielder for the last 5 games of our season. And we won them all. So certainly that's a data point. I do think we looked a bit different in those games, and we've covered how we looked a bit different. And with the rumor that Mikel Merino is coming in, I think most people have watched him closely. And when we scouted him, he really is an 8 in the sense that he will play in the more advanced zones. I don't see him being the deepest of the 3 midfielders. So there is an open question about who will have the role of that deeper midfielder, the midfielder who sort of sits alongside the inverted fullback. Maybe Declan Rice will take over that role. He certainly could. I don't think that's out of the question, although Mikel has preferred to use him last season in the more advanced role. So watching Thomas Partey play is instructive for us because he would certainly be one of the options. I think the idea that Jorginho can play every game is not something anybody believes. And when I watch him play, the best way I can say it is that I don't see him getting to the spots, to the positions off the ball that I think he used to get to and that player needs to get to. And so, he can still certainly progress the ball. We saw, especially in the second half, we had 70% possession, very tidy on the ball, can still, get it on the half turn and get it out to the winger in a quick and effective way. But the movement around the pitch seems to be an issue. And I do think that in this game, if we wanted to focus on individuals, there are certainly individuals we can focus on. We might want to talk about the striker. We might want to talk about the left back. But I think midfield is the area we have the biggest question mark. So that's why I'm focusing on this. Do you have a thought on sort of his performance and how you're thinking about that midfield trio and what the roles will be?
Yeah, I see the chat out there. I see the chat in our own WhatsApp about Thomas Partey. So I do watch him. And there are times where I think, crikey, mate, can you get a step on there a little bit? But I'm also recognizing that he's an experienced guy trying to get through preseason without getting injured. I do not expect him to be running around like a 3-year-old in this time of the season. So that's one angle. And that's smart, by the way. He can't afford another injury. He just can't for many, many reasons. And then I look at the shape of the team. I think, well, there's a lot of space there to cover. You're playing with Odegaard and Havertz, and I thought Havertz is a very good player. And they're finding their feet. They're finding their fitness. So they're not going to get to the spots. And all three of them didn't get to the spots. That's why it was a basketball game, right? So on the ball, all three of them look great. Off the ball, the Miles will be sitting next to me. Do you know what I mean? Seriously, he wasn't great. But that's okay. That's fitness, isn't it? That's fitness. And so one of our patrons actually did a fantastic feedback to your instant reaction last night. His name's Alex. He thought, I'm not worried about Thomas Partey and Jorginho and all this because we have ball progression aplenty. We've got fullbacks and centre midfield. We can just rotate them around. Oh, no. What I am worried about is our ability to finish. Our ability to finish. And that's a consistent theme with us, to not take our chances, control the game state. I thought, there is a man that knows his football. I'm not worried about Thomas. Whatever you think of these players, Zinchenko, Partey, whichever one you don't fancy and you want to try and find a reason not to fancy them, whatever you think of them, they are not the future of the club. They are not, right? So, and that's it. That's absolutely clear. There are other players that have overtaken them in the pecking order in regard to importance. And there are other issues in our team which are more important than that. We have players to cover that. That's not a problem. And we're going to add another one in to give us that midfield balance. So in order of priorities, what worries me is our inability to shoot early and finish and make the correct runs in the box. Because there we are talking about players that we are relying on. There's only one forward missing, mate. There's only one forward missing. And so we have to get better in that. And that's part of the improvement. That's the thing that comes. The last thing that comes, actually, mate, is scoring a goal. That's the sharpness of brain. That's the hardest thing to find. The rest is just an exercise in building up. And so, yeah, on the ball, really, really good for Thomas Partey. Off the ball, not so good. And to be honest, I think, you're going to laugh at me, Elliot, but I think he's actually made improvements in the last season. Because I was really worried. I thought, wow, you are in trouble, that Everton game. Something's gone wrong. And he is going through preseason okay. So, but like I say, I'm not relying on him anymore. The situation where we used to have to rely on him has gone a year ago. So now he becomes a player that we can use or a player that needs to be sold. Either or, I'm comfortable with. If we can use him, make sure he's fit and we can use him in the correct role with the correct balance. And that goes the same for Jorginho, by the way. The other options are not exactly spring chickens neither. So we have a weakness there with the two 31-year-olds that play really good for 10 minutes, have an issue in the next 10 minutes, or play really good for 2 games and then drop away the next game. How we manage that situation is really important for us. But like I say, I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it's the biggest problem, shall we say, in this particular evening.
So it's interesting. I think that's the only place that maybe we diverge slightly, because I think people would say, well, you're talking about Partey. Why haven't you mentioned Zinchenko yet? My attitude with the Zinchenko thing is, I think he just confirmed last night what a lot of us suspect, which is we have moved away from him. We now have Tomiyasu, Calafiori, Timber, still have Kivior. There's a lot of left back options. I think Calafiori, my opinion is that Calafiori was brought in to start at left back.
Maybe.
Timber will certainly play there some.
Once he settles,
Yep. Tomiyasu, if he gets fit in the time frame people said, I think he will play a lot if he stays fit. I think Mikel rates him quite highly. So the Zinchenko conversation feels less acute to me because we have so many options in that area and options that I think Mikel will trust more. It's a shame in a way because if you look at like the goal we scored, Zinchenko did some beautiful things in the build up to that goal. You still see on the ball some of the stuff that made him important to us when he arrived. But to your point, Clive, and I think this is really key. You said something interesting. You said these players are not the future of the club. So when Zinchenko and Jesus arrived, they were the ratchet that brought us up to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But they themselves may not be able to sustain that next level we want to get to.
Absolutely.
You're right that for example, Partey and Jorginho are not the future of the club. But here's the interesting thing. Unlike 2 or 3 seasons ago, the future of the club is right now. Right? You know what I'm saying? Like 2 or 3 seasons ago, we were still talking about a project. I don't think we're thinking about a project anymore. I think there's a belief that that the project can come to a culmination of sorts this season. And so what we have as options becomes very important. And when I look at left back, I see a bounty. We have literally all of them. But when I look in midfield, I am really curious about how Mikel will approach that. I mean, we saw Kai Havertz play in midfield in this game.
Yeah.
And I want to bring up a tweet you wrote and get into that. We know where Declan Rice has been preferred. We know where Martin Odegaard's going to play. I thought at times he was dropping too deep in this game to help with ball progression, by the way. But again, it's preseason and we didn't have Declan Rice in there. We'll see. But I do think that 6, and to the extent that there is a difference between 6 and 8 in our team, you know what I'm referring to. I think that is a position where there's still an open question about who you know what you say? You say game for your life. Game for your life, Clive. What's your midfield 3 at Arsenal? Game for your life. Champions League final. Who's the midfield 3?
I don't want to answer that just yet because I think we need to see a little bit
you
more.
Son of a.
Yeah, but if they were all fit and available and at the top of their game, the game for my life team would still be Partey, Rice, and Odegaard. We've Havertz.
So I want to. Okay.
Yeah.
And so here's the interesting thing, right? I think that's very instructive because what that tells me is that our best midfield in your mind still includes a Thomas Partey that we're unsure we have. There may be that player may still be there, but we're unsure.
I caveated it, right? So I caveated it. And so my view is really, when I said that they're not the future of Arsenal, what I really meant to say is they were number one priorities. When they didn't play, we didn't play, right?
Yep.
So now we have other options to play. We have other options to progress the ball. I remember games when Zinchenko didn't play. We couldn't progress the ball. We'd make subs at half time. We couldn't play forward, right? So we come up with solutions. And the reason why Odegaard came deeper because Havertz played higher to be the long ball exit because goalkeeper can't play. So we swap it around, and that's why Odegaard has to drop deeper, and Havertz basically plays in his role next to Jesus, so almost like a front 2. That's what we had to do. That was a solution in this game. So it's not a solution for every game. The solution in this game. A lot of people like to see that, by the way. And the Odegaard comp going around this morning looks very, very good, right? So,
well, he got a stock rising for me last night.
Yeah, and because on the ball he was really, really good. Off the ball, like a piece of tissue paper, right? So, and that's the issue that we have, right? So we have to stop looking at this game with just the last pass and last clip around the corner or last reverse. It's a unit, and the unit was broken. So for me, my conclusions are not the same as they would be when I see a proper game when everything's tight. Distances of 15 and 20. That's it. And it's a 5-a-side big rondo game. We weren't playing that last night. Liverpool got us into a transition game. And the reason why we couldn't hold the ball up front and went back to our keeper too long and we couldn't build play as effectively under Liverpool's press when they had energy. That was the reason why we lost control of the game. We ended up getting into a running race, into a big transition game, which is Liverpool's strength. And they caught us on a transition on the first goal, upset and through. On the second goal, they counter-pressed us into an area, flicked it around over the top, and bang, finish. Really clinical. 2-0 in a friendly is quite a big distance. Do you know what I mean? Because people tire. And so that basically was the game over. So, yeah, I thought it was really interesting. It was a reminder to me, Elliot, about how we should play, how we will play. And when we see it's not even proper team, it's proper shape. Because when you want to be compact, I can say the words, be compact. Do you know how much fitness it requires to be compact?
So a lot, yes, absolutely.
Because you're literally saying, imagine like a swarm of bees, right? And you're trying to squeeze that space. And when Martinelli moves up the left, the right back's got to tuck in. And when Saka moves off the right, the left back's got to tuck in, and you've got to constantly move based on the movement of your players and your peers. And that requires a lot of fitness and a lot of mental energy. And we do it really, really well, as well as any team in Europe. But when we're playing like this and we're not at our shape, that's not going to be the case. That's why some of these pre-season friendlies are a little bit helter skelter.
Yeah, ragged. Yeah.
And that's part of the fun, isn't it? That's part of the fun.
Yeah, certainly. And like, I will say this, I'm not worried about the goals we conceded because at the end of the day, I have pretty good confidence in how we're going to be defensively. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to watch preseason to know if we're going to defend well. I know that when it's Saliba and Gabriel and White and Timber or White and Tomiyasu or White and Calafiore, like with Declan Rice out there, like we're going to defend just fine. I'm not concerned about that. I do think the last action in the attacking third is a concern. And Mikel himself said, in an interview just before the tour, one of the areas we need to improve is efficiency in the last third. And last night it was on display. I felt that Jesus and Martinelli showed us something in LA that was a reminder of what we have in those players. And maybe they showed us something in Philadelphia that was a reminder of that there's still question marks about them providing that efficiency in the last third.
But can I hold you on that thought? Because this is a classic example of player judgment. Because for me, Martinelli and Jesus showed me a lot on this tour. Because I questioned their sharpness. I questioned where they were fitness-wise, particularly Jesus. He is razor. So I've got other concerns about him, but that is a step one in building the wall, right? Them two look sharp, right? So the other issues around Jesus is we have a situation where I don't know what he's going to do, Elliot, when the ball goes up to him. And if I don't know what he's going to do, if he's going to keep it, what you don't do is you don't commit to the next pass for him, right? And this is my big thing about Kai Havertz. He gives us so much availability and certainty of action that we can build around him. He is clearly our best centre forward.
I thought he was our best player full stop last night, for what it's worth.
It's so clear. And it's not about him being a better player. He's a better player for us and how we play. We can do more things with him. It's been clear from the moment he came in. If you look, I'm sure Scott's got information. I did read something that from Christmas onwards, when he came in centre forward, I don't know if we lost like one game or something like that. But it's not down to him. But our direction offensively, he started in the cup game for me, Liverpool. I thought he was brilliant in that game, though everyone looked at the soft chances he missed. But we were going forward. And again, Jesus has shown something, a lot of fitness and energy, as has Martinelli. But we need to refine those guys in the box. They've got to get better with their shooting and their shot selection and their pass selection. Because I think it's their ability. They're going to get in these situations a lot, and we're falling down.
Yeah, I mean, the efficiency in the last third thing that Mikel talked about, like obviously Martinelli got in that one time. He could have played the ball across first time to Jesus. He doesn't. He decides to try to beat his man again. He does beat his man again, and then plays, a pass that doesn't make it to Jesus in the middle, where Jesus would have had a tap in if he had passed it either time, and Jesus made a good run, and it was well timed. It was good attack. There was another time where Jesus doesn't make a run to the near post, and Reece Nelson, in one of his better actions of the game, got past his man, cut it back, and Jesus was late arriving. Yeah. Which is sort of underscored by the fact that Kai Havertz gets his goal from standing in the center forward position and being quick of thought and action with the sort of flick to get the goal. The lovely little drop of the shoulder from Odegaard to set that up. Yep. And I just think it is the case that in Mikel's mind, I think Jesus was going to be the center forward and Kai was going to be the 8, but Jesus would drop and Kai would go, and they'd have this lovely little ability to change positions and unsettle defenses because they'd be unsure of where they'd be located. If a defender comes and follows Jesus, Kai can go in behind that space. And Mikel never really got to see it last season. He got to see it a bit last night. And to be fair, in some ways it worked. I think Kai got in a few times. I think Jesus got in a few times. Yep. But it only works if Jesus can execute. I think Jesus is a brilliant player. I don't know if in his own mind he's a striker. You know what I mean? Does he believe he's a striker? Because it's one thing to wear number 9 and play striker. It's another thing to really believe I'm a killer. I'm a striker. And when he plays in midfield, when he comes off the wing, when he drops deep, he looks so comfortable. When he gets in the box and wants to beat a guy 4 different times before getting a shot off, he doesn't look like a guy who believes he's Arsenal's number 9 to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so in Martinelli and Jesus, I think we have 2 absolutely fantastic players. What we got in Trossard and Kai Havertz last season was 2 players who executed in the final third at a level that Jesus and Martinelli did not. And I think what we saw with Martinelli last night, though, is his pace, his directness, his energy, his effervescence. Like, those things are hugely important for us. So he just needs to put it all together. He did in LA, maybe a little bit more mixed in this game. There's a lot of options for the front 3. And I think some of it's going to come down to this Merino move. And maybe we just touch on this now. We'll continue with the game, but let's bring the Merino transfer into the conversation, because, Clive, I do think Merino is, in a weird way, a Kai type player, in the sense that if he's playing 8, that left 8, he's not a metronome. He's not a regain retain type guy. He's a last action, win the duel, get the ball back, ball right back into the box, win the aerial duels, arrive at the back post. He's a lot of the, I don't think he has the technical level of Kai, and he's certainly not a striker, but I think he'd be more in that mold than like an Odegaard type 8. So if that's the case, if he is coming in and if Mikel thinks he's going to be a key part of the squad, now, to be fair, he may be coming in to just be part of the squad.
Yeah.
But if he's coming in to be in the team, then that certainly changes Kai's role and maybe indicates that Kai is going to be our center forward, and Jesus is going to have to find more options as a rotational option. So how do you think about Merino? Not just is he good or not? You can watch the scouting video. You can hear what we've said about that before, but what his role might be, how significant it might be in the knock-on effects for other players.
Yeah, we see. You asked me earlier on about what do you see as our best midfield, and actually, the best midfield I like. I said Thomas Partey earlier, but actually, the best midfield I like is probably Rice, Havertz, and Odegaard. But the problem is, Havertz is our best centre forward, as well as one of our best left 8s. And the thing about Rice being 6 or 8, I think he's one of our best 8s, but he's also, for me, our best 6. And so what do?
Yeah.
You mix and match, and that's the issue. So again, game for your life. I'll be honest with you, mate. Game for your life. You want Rice protecting your life, wouldn't you, in front of the back 4? And then people say, "What about ball progression?" Then we say, "Well, look at the players that we brought around him. Look at what we have. Is that the most important thing?" And I think it is, right? So the game for your life for me. That's the style of football I like. And other people want something else. They want Zubimendi. They want something else in there. That's totally understandable. And when we can't progress it, I may say as well the same thing. Why we get Zubimendi in? And so it depending on the game you're playing, etc. But going back to Merino slightly, he's just an all-rounder, Elliot. He's an all-rounder, mate. He's a I call them bank manager footballers. Sensible. Bank manager. Do sensible stuff. Ball comes, knock it. Needs a clip, I'll clip it. Need a tackle, I'll tackle it. Sensible guy. Guy with sideburns. Guy that's a bloke that comes in there with big shoulders. Yeah, well, I'm playing today. What they got? Well, they ain't going to get past me. Game over, right? So
Yeah.
you need those guys. You don't need things that are not certain. Played at all the levels, played international levels. There's nothing to see here, mate. Solid player. Last year contract, 25 million, probably 100 grand a week, which need triples his money. Thank you very much. Where do I sign? And half the coaching staff speak Spanish. What's the problem here? Do you know what I mean? It's really simple move. And you look at him play, and he plays like an Arsenal player in that left-hand side of the pitch. But also, you look at a lot of his actions on the right-hand side. If Odegaard needs to come off in a game, we want to use him as the other midfielder, the other 8. It's done. I can play on the right as well. If I need to double pivot, I can drop back and double pivot. Which side do I want me to stand? This left side or right side? It's not a problem. I can look after the ball. I've got the fundamentals that we need. That we are used to. How many touches you have, the rhythm. We're used to it. So that's a very simple move for me. And I was searching my time. Well, someone searched my timeline and said that, Clive, you mentioned him years ago when we were probably having the Granit Xhaka lookalike competition, trying to see what was out there. And he was one, and Fabian Ruiz was another. And here we are 3-4 years later, and potentially we're going to get one. And I think it's a really sensible move.
Yeah, I think as is the case with all transfers, you want to get swept away by it. You want to be excited by it. You want to see the bull case for it, right? What's it going to be at its best? And I think, to me, it seems pretty clear what it could be at its best. A few things to say about that. First of all, Merino had a down season last season. Statistically, a lot of the good Sociedad players did. I'm not sure what went on there because I didn't watch them, obviously. But the season before that, he had a bit more creative numbers in terms of assists and key passes and playing players in. The one thing that doesn't change about him, he is an absolute duel monster. His duel numbers are through the roof. You've probably heard this before by now, but not just ground duels, but aerial duels as well. He just wins an outrageous number of them. He does commit quite a lot of fouls and pick up cards. So he's a combative player, right? And I do think it is very telling that Mikel wanted to add a midfielder, and he didn't go for a pass master. He didn't go for the Zubamendi profile. He didn't go for someone who completes a high percentage of passes and makes a million progressive passes. He went for a duel winner, a combative player, a big player. I will say there is a win it in the tunnel kind of approach here. When you see Kai Havertz and Mikel Merino and Declan Rice and Saliba and Gabriel and Calafiori and Ben White, and you're standing next to them in the tunnel, you're beaten. You cannot physically compete with that team, right? You cannot physically compete with that team. The question is, does that team have the technical level? And I think it does. I don't think this is going to kill that component of it. The bull case for him is obvious. He wins a million duels. You cannot progress the ball past him. He makes our press even more effective. He makes us even more of a set piece threat, if that's possible. He gives us that back post arrival. When he's arriving in the back post and Kai Havertz is in the box, we have more ways to unsettle defenses, create room for Saka and Martinelli to attack off the edges and give them targets for their balls into the box. And that's the bull case. I do think you have to at least acknowledge what the downside case is for a signing. If you don't, then you're a fan, and that's fine. But analysis, I think, involves both sides of the coin. I think the bear case is pretty straightforward. Simply that the level of his passing and his technical quality in the final third is not as high as we'd like. And so we sometimes struggle to progress the ball when he plays and sometimes find him a bit clunky in the final third, and he's not able to unlock that side. He's going to win duels. That much is clear. But maybe the bear case also includes the speed of the Premier League, his high foul numbers, his high duel attempt numbers means he does pick up quite a few fouls. He does pick up quite a few yellow cards, and it puts us in situations where games get stopped. We saw the Porto tie in the Champions League, right? They went to ground all the time. Can teams break up play and get us out of our flow-based system? So I see the bull case. I think it's important to at least say what the bear case might be, so you're doing well-rounded analysis. And I don't think he has to be a guy who starts 38 games either, by the way.
No, none of them do. None of them do.
So I think it's still out there. And
I'm
by
not
the way,
worried about it.
I still think there are other moves potentially out there for us to do. Josh Kroenke did a great interview. I think it was with James Ollie, and if it's not, I apologize. It was in ESPN. You should read it. Yep. He said, we're still trying to bring additional pieces in. Mikel has referenced that as well. I don't think the business is done. I certainly think if Eddie goes out and Reece Nelson goes out and maybe there's one more surprising exit, there's money to be spent. So Clive, to me though, his arrival certainly signals that Kai will get more opportunities to play center forward. That's the knock-on effect that I see. And that Declan Rice may start to evolve into being more of the six, where I think, if I'm being honest, I think at 8, he can be one of the best players in the league. I think at 6, he can be one of the best players in the world. He can become what Rodri is if he's given the keys to go do that. So do you see it having similar knock-on effects for those players?
Well, I definitely agree with you on Rice. I think it's I don't want to say it's time to fix him into one position, but maybe it's coming soon, and more competition will just make it natural, so. And me and you disagree on what 8s look like. I'm sure you'd like an Eze to be coming in rather than a Marino because you like that type of player. That's absolutely fine.
Why not both?
Lots of people do. And that's nothing. I'm not critiquing you, Elliot. You're just a fancy down attacker, right? So, whereas I like the Grizzly bank manager type player that's going to knock your head off if you even look at him the wrong way. That's what I like, right? So it is interesting to see what we're doing here, and interesting how we're bringing all rounders in. I do think we're also thinking we have to think what we have learned about on this tour. Sorry, I'm just lost my train of thought there for a second. I have been thinking about what we found out on this tour. So we found out that Jesus is still a footballer and he's got his cheekbones back and he looks really well and healthy and fit. Maybe because he's so sharp, we're now uncovering some of the final action stuff again with like a reminder because he's so sharp. He wasn't even getting those at the end of last season. He wasn't nowhere near to be seen, right? So that's a good thing. Martinelli looks like he's come to compete, which is really, really good. Really, really good. Timber in the first early games, Elliot, flipping hell. That player's not messing about, is he? Right? So
where's he going to play?
I don't care, mate. Honestly, I don't care. That's not a problem for me. That's a problem for the person trying to stop him getting into the team, right? So, and that's how you got to view it. He's coming, mate. So,
is that why Ben White's in such a bad mood last night?
No, who knows what's going to happen? Because there'll be some days we need something different. You know how this works now, right? So, but that's not a problem for any of us listening. This is a problem for the players trying to compete with each other. So do something special to keep him out, right? Otherwise, you're getting out. You're not staying in the team. Right, so he's an addition. I gotta say, the two kids were just such wonderful players to watch, and their development this year in the Champions League games for the youth level and some of the lower level games for us. That's going to be one of the highlights of the season for me to watch them come through, and even next year it's going to be even better, right? Because they are Arsenal players without a doubt, and to get two at the same age group to come through to get to what I think is a top 8 team in the world and look okay, that's a massive tick. So we found two players there out of nowhere. And because
I thought last night, Miles Lewis-Skelly really, really shined. I mean, Nwaneri's been great all tour, but Skelly had a really nice cameo last night. And it's the first time ball progression, get it and go forward with it right away. Very confident punching it between the lines. And I don't think he's a fullback. What's interesting with Nwaneri and Miles Lewis-Skelly is there's a future I'd be happy with, where Rice is the 6 and Skelly and Nwaneri are the 8s, but there's a lot of great players in the team blocking that path,
Yeah, and they need to get a bit older, right? That's all it is. It's just time.
Yeah.
But you can see it clearly. You can see it. So that's two players that we found. I thought Vieira showed a bit in the second half yesterday. I thought he showed a bit. Am I convinced? Not yet, but I'm more convinced I was in the previous games, right? So I thought that was interesting coming from him.
Can I ask you about him?
Yeah,
real
go
quick?
ahead.
Since Ron Vieira, because I think this is an interesting one. I actually said on the instant reaction last night, and I really believe this, that this is the disaster preseason for Vieira.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty convinced he will go based on this preseason. And the reason I feel that way is I don't think Vieira is a wide player. I just don't think that's what he is. It's not that he can't do anything there. I mean, he's got a great shot. He had that snapshot with his right foot that was well saved. I think he's good with that. He's very lightweight, so I think it's easier for fullbacks to bully him. He had the one challenge at the touchline where he had himself between the ball and the man still just kind of got the ball around him. He went to ground weakly looking for a foul. But I don't think he's a wide player. And the reason I'm saying it's the disaster preseason so far is he's finally fit. He's here. He's ready. He's got a preseason. In my mind, I'm thinking he'll play some of Odegaard's role this preseason. He'll play some left 8 this preseason. Those are positions where I think he's really well suited and gives us something maybe different from the other options. More on the ball than Kai, more on the ball, last action than Declan Rice. He might have an option there.
Yeah. So
and not only has he not impressed, he hasn't been given the. My point is, Nwaneri started in those positions ahead of him, played in those positions ahead of him. Vieira's only option has been to come on in the Saka role. And I think the only reason he's even come on there is because we just don't have anyone other than Reece Nelson to play there. So it's not a glowing recommendation from Mikel in terms of what he thinks of him, in my view, that he's played him on the right and not even that much. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that's a good sign for him.
So let's go back to it again.
I mean, he's listed as a midfielder.
We are trying to build minutes into multiple players, so the minutes are shared. I think Odegaard might be one of 2 players that played a 90 in the entire tour, right? So no one's playing 90s. You're trying to build people up. So what you should be thinking about there, Elliot, is, okay, where did he play all of the time? He played on the right wing, right? So all of the time, which means we're looking at him there. We're not looking at him as a Saka winger. We're looking at him as a Bernardo Silva winger, right? Or even a Grealish winger. Because you know what, a midfielder who play wide? Do you see what I mean? They're a more creative, controlling winger. My issue is the things I'm focusing on is that Bernardo Silva and Grealish, they can control the ball and protect the ball and allow continuity. So if you're not going to be super quick and getting behind, when the ball goes into you, it must be safe. It must be safe. And what's happening is, and some of the referee standards not great, by the way, but what's happening is he's losing the
it's
ball.
been terrible.
Yeah? He's losing the ball. He's getting bullied off the ball. Maybe it's a foul in the Premier League. Maybe not. Right? But the message is there, isn't it? The feedback is right there. And he's off the ball defending, as we saw in the earlier games, so that's improved. Needs to be worked on. Right? So, but I will say, to be credit to him, because we criticised him one of the other ones we did, in particular after the Bournemouth game, I thought last night he was an improvement. Now, separate. What are you trying to answer? What question are you trying to answer? If we are saying, Fabio Vieira, you are now Bukayo Saka's rest guy, that may not be enough for many people. That may not be enough, because it looks like to me you're not Odegaard's takeout. Looks like to me you're not going to be the left 8 takeout. So this is your position, and then we ask ourselves: is that enough wide abilities? I keep it saying, no, we need someone faster, we need someone bigger, we need someone, and they could be right, but that's how you use your squad. And you can say, if we were to buy a centre forward now, and then you use Jesus in the wide areas as well, suddenly your wide areas are covered in different ways, and you go from there, right? So sometimes in these games, you're trying to answer something. You need to look at it. And Nelson is maybe not for the future, but Fabio Vieira could be. So let's have a look at him in that area and answer a question. Let's find out what we've got there before we go spend money. I think that's what we're trying to do on this tour.
Yeah, it's certainly a measured and interesting perspective. I think my reaction isn't necessarily to the quality of his performance as much as it is that a player I think is regarded as a midfielder hasn't been given any minutes in midfield to sort of
we don't sort of know,
demonstrate
do we,
how.
When he came in, mate, he played left back, he'd played centre mid in the 2, he played right wing, left wing, and he played false 9 before we signed him. Right, so we all thought, me included, Elliot, you're sharing minutes with Odegaard. When Odegaard needs a rest, you can play there. He hasn't really had a lot of time there, has he? And when he hasn't really gone well. Left 8, it's gone okay, but not really brilliant, a bit patchy. The best I've seen him is when he's out wide. He's almost out the way and clipping passes and coming off the side. So I think he's finding his position. Is it enough? Other people can judge, but I thought he was solidifying his position. And in this game, I felt a bit of hope coming from him, whereas other games I haven't felt that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's safe to say that we probably won't see a lot of Vieira minutes. Honestly, that's where I'm at with this. I'll put it this way: I'd be very surprised if he is a significant contributor this season. And it's a shame in a way, because going into the preseason, I had a little twinkle of an idea that he could be a breakout player for us, because I think in terms of what he can do in the 8 position, he brings something different than the various options we have there. I think he can be an effective edge of the box and in the box player in that role, but we haven't seen him there, and I don't think that bodes so well. So we did get to see the kids in the second half. The second half was the one we controlled more. I also think it was the one that we just played with less intention to go do anything. If you follow what I'm saying, I think we had more threat to us in a more open game in the first half. We got our hands around the game more in the second half, especially because Liverpool played so many kids and made so many changes, but there just wasn't much to it.
Yep.
But Eddie did get on, and I'm just wondering what you make of that. My read on it is very simply, we're negotiating with Marseille, and that's our way of saying, if you don't meet our valuation, we're going to use this player. So if you want him, you better hurry up and get to our valuation.
Yeah, maybe. I think 2 halves. I didn't like the first half, honestly. It's too broken for me. Too much green grass in front of my TV. I didn't like that. Right. So, and so I'm now looking at people doing one good thing, one bad thing in a big space. So that's not for me. That's not how we play. So second half was more like how we play. And then you uncover other issues, our ability to create space in the box, separation, to win challenges in the key areas, to get the knockdowns. We didn't really have a lot of that. But I much preferred our second half performance, because I saw build up, I saw waves of attack, I saw us spinning it out wide both sides, coming off the side in Trossard, who's another sort of creative wide winger that hasn't got pace, by the way. you know. And so a sort of similar player to Vieira in some ways without the 10 goals, right? So it was basically Trossard. I wouldn't mind Scott doing the thing. Where would Arsenal be if we didn't sign Trossard? I think that would be an interesting statistical discovery to do, because I think he's an unbelievable player when it comes to output, right? So Vieira wants an example. There's your example. You're just as quick as him. You got skills. You know what he does? He's the centre of the ball when he needs to, and he does it in first time. And he gets himself into areas where he can finish. Well, that's what Vieira needs to do. That's the coaching done there. And so yeah, I think the second half I quite liked. I quite liked where we played. I could look at us, and then that uncovers something else, doesn't it? It uncovers our ability in the box. Then you realise that flipping hell, Kai Havertz is quite important. You know, Odegaard's quite important. Rice is important, and Ray is quite important. Well, flipping it, three of those are major signings we made last season. And how important are they to the team now? They are critical players. And we do need to make sure that they're not used every second of every single game.
I think that's right. So I just want to ask you, just for the record, like, I think Eddie will go, and I think Nelson will go. I think Nelson has a chance to stay because he's been used quite a lot. I think it's a chance for Mikel to look and say, is this a guy I trust to be the sort of nominal Saka backup? I also think Gabriel Jesus will play some of that role. Obviously, Fabio Vieira has had a chance to audition for that role, and who knows, maybe there's an attacking player still to come. Do you have a thought on, whether one or both of those will go if you just had to sort of put your life on it?
Yeah, so I do think Eddie is ready to go, shall we say. And good luck to him when he does go. Right, so the number seems okay, a little bit light, but no doubt also I've got to sell on in there as well. Let the boy play. And so, yeah, go from there. I've always felt of all the three Hale Enders, the one that I sort of liked the most was Nelson, because he always comes back fit and sharp. I query him sometimes. I think he loses it mentally. He had to be more switched on in this game, off the ball in particular, and realise what he had on in front of him, that he had something on him. If he ran him in behind, he was trying to get tight to you. Just take him for a run. You'd be fine. He's experienced enough to know what to do now. He's got all the physical capabilities, and I don't mind the player. I really don't mind the player. And again, it's not a priority, but someone we can use regularly. So Eddie and Smith Rowe need to go play, and we're going to get our 50 odd million, whatever it is, for them. And that's good money for the club that we can reinvest. So, yeah, it's the right thing to do, Eddie. It's the right thing to do. If Nelson goes, I'm not feeling the club at the moment. Leicester thing seems to have quietened down a little bit. West Ham, they're flirting a little bit, but I don't see much there. Crystal Palace are losing players. Mateta might be moving on unbelieving there. And so they might be in need of another attacker, shall we say, in the short term. So this thing will all come out in the wash soon. But I wouldn't mind it if he stayed. I wouldn't mind it at all.
Yeah. So we've got Leverkusen and Lyon coming up. I think we will get a chance to see Declan Rice come back, Bukayo Saka come back, and hopefully start to round into shape for what is a very, very difficult start to the season. It's funny, they put up Liverpool's first 5 games on the screen last night for the broadcast, and I was thinking, yeah, they should win their first 5 games. Yeah. They're going to be well favored in all of them. Whereas we know we have a very, very difficult start. So is basically the most critical thing that can happen in the next 2 weeks that we're able to get Rice and Bukayo Saka up to speed to start the season? Or do you think we need to be prepared for them not to be ready for the start?
I said to you that I don't think they'll play the first game, but then I listened to Mikel speak, and he sort of said, I didn't hear anything in his voice that said he was giving them a day off, right? So, yeah, I think they potentially could play. And Elliot, I'm more worried about them going away with England than I am with playing the first 2 games. If they can get a break from England, that would be really, really nice. But our start is really difficult. I mean, we got Wolves at home. Gary O'Neill is a smart coach, right? And everyone will be watching us. And so, yeah, I think that'd be tough. Villa away, we know they are the new enemy, and they'll be waiting for us live on TV on a Saturday. Thank you very 5:30. Oh, brilliant! And then Brighton with a new manager, a new style of play, new build-up structures. they're going to be looking to impress, and they're getting their players back. And Cisso's back. They got some very good players. That's a tough game. So we need to be at it. Honestly, mate, if we get those first 3 wins, I'll be pleased, but maybe I'll be honest with you, a little bit surprised, because it's tough. It's a tough start, right? And then we have the break, and then we come back to Spurs away, and then City away, and then we got Leicester at home. But Spurs and City, say we don't pick up the points, that 2-week international break, you'll be like in a place that I'm going to have to get some special tablets sent over to you to calm you down, right? So we don't get those
Look,
points.
I just need a little bit of A4 and a marker. That's all it takes to write Arteta out.
And then we go to Spurs. We go to Spurs on a Sunday, live in front of the nation again. Oh, I'm staying off WhatsApp that day if you haven't got the points. And then we go to City. So this is a huge challenge, massive challenge. And so we're building for these moments. We're not building for Liverpool and Philadelphia. I'm sorry, we're just not. We're building our players to be able to compete against some really good teams and really early on. Really early on. And we need all our players fit and available to be able to do that. And I think it's going to be so interesting to see what we end up doing. But what I will say, physically, we're looking fit. Size-wise, we're looking strong with potential additions. And so we worry about our team, but there's been a lot of people worrying about us when we turn up. A lot of people worrying about us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're still going to be very, very good. It goes back to what I said at the start of the pod. The criticism of this team is about, will they be an 89-point team again or a 91-point team? Not will they be good. They're going to be good. The start is hard. And the thing that worries me slightly about it is just that because of what we went through last season, the first time we drop any points, it's going to be, well, there goes the title. Yeah, there's going to be that feeling because we remember that the margins are so fine and there's so little room for error. But I do think it is also going to be a weird start to the season because these post-tournament seasons tend to throw up some weird results early. We know that Manchester City often starts slow, by the way, and then they go on that ridiculous tear in the second half. That's kind of how the Pep teams have worked. And I do think that Liverpool will have a period of adjustment under Slot. I think United will be bad again. I think Chelsea will be bad again. So, I don't know that the battle at the top will be much more than Arsenal and City again. And maybe with any luck, City will struggle to hit the ground running as well. So while it will be hard to keep our head if we drop points, it may be the case that drop points are a little more commonplace at the top to start the season. Is that possible?
Yeah, maybe. Honestly, I just think looking at our games, I think we got a tough start, mate, and that's almost feels by design. It's going to be a real challenge for us to stay together. If we win the first 5 in it, what's happening here? I'd be shocked. I'll be honest if I'm honest with you, because they're so tough, those games. But if we do win the first 5, whoa, it'd be hard to control me. So, sometimes I know I take the mickey out of you about your worrying and your angst, etc. But I don't really, because you give me a window into the world that people are not as relaxed as myself about these things. But what's the one thing we could do regarding additions that would make you more relaxed, shall we say?
So I think there's really one of two things.
No,
something really exciting. Well, so I'm torn because it's either something really exciting in the attacking third, right, where we add what Mikel talked about with our efficiency in the box. I'd love an Eze. I don't know who the other options would be, but something really dynamic and exciting in the attacking third. The other thing, though, and I might even want it more, is if there was, this is the problem. Well, I'll tell you the problem in a minute. Would be a really exciting athletic ball progressing 6. Now, the problem I have is the next thing you should be asked if you say that is, give me a name. And I don't have a name. I mean, I was excited about Bruno Guimaraes as an option. But Bruno Guimaraes at 100 million pounds and 250,000 pounds a week may not be the guy. You can't say, well, we wanted Bruno and we got Mikel Merino. Well, Mikel Merino is 25 million and probably 100,000 a week. It's a totally different kind of signing. And by the way, a different class of player. But I don't know who those players are. And that's the hard thing, Clive. Maybe this feels almost like an Ozil window to me, in that I think there are some dominoes that will shake loose. I think PSG acquiring João Neves might make someone available from their midfield. Now that might be Ugarte going to, Manchester United. I think the additions at Real Madrid may mean that Rodrigo winds up being available before this window closes. I do
Yep.
think that there may be opportunistic moves available as we get towards the deadline for clubs that get players in that make one exciting player surplus to their requirements. So
Yep.
that would be the thing. I'd say let's get Merino done, and then maybe we wait and we see what becomes available. Leroy Sané at Bayern, that could be exciting. Is that a player we want to go for? Mikel would know him really well. Do you agree? Do you think it could be a dominoes situation like that?
I think it's so interesting. I wanted to ask you because I knew you'd give me an honest answer. And it's so interesting how people are just writing off Rice as a 6 all of a sudden. And it's a style thing. That's all it is. It's style. There's different ways.
Can I ask you a question about that? Do
Mhm.
you think the Euros are having an impact on that? Because I
I
think
do. I
people
do.
looked at him in the Euros next to a very young midfielder who does not progress the ball in Mainu and thought, ooh, maybe Rice isn't a 6. And I think that's hugely unfair on him.
It's hugely unfair. It's all about environment. All about environment. And if I listen to our podcast we did last year, we were debating whether, I remember the conversation, we were debating whether we should have him sitting there as a Michael Carrick base your defense or a Steven Gerrard running around rampaging, right? So maybe we're about to buy a rampager, and so that's that sorted. I just feel I look at Rice and I look at him and all I see is something that just needs to be tweaked. His passing is unbelievable. It's both feet. He's crisp. He strikes it. He's got all the passes. I just don't think he's ever been schooled that that's him, And I think what he likes to do, he likes to receive the ball on the run rather than standing still where he can't see things. He likes to go on the angle, receive it on the run, and run away from pressure and then pass it, right? So can we get it to do it on one? So you run to the ball with the angle. Jorginho and Partey do it really well. They run to the ball, for say when White's got it, they run to him, shoulders square, flick round the corner. He can do that. Of course he can. So this is just coaching. I'd rather develop him, spend £100 million on something that can't affect the goal. When I see him standing there back to goal in the number 8 position, waiting for the next rebound and regain to happen, yeah, it's okay because we've got enough players. It's not a problem. For 8 out of 10 games, it's not a problem. In the very best games, mate, I want him in the middle of our pitch, controlling it and making sure they can't get through us. That's the stuff I want. And that decision's coming. Doesn't have to happen right now. But I think we're all suddenly dismissing his abilities in the 6 because we've seen some weaknesses. Well, you know what? There were some weaknesses with Bukayo Saka in the Euros as well because he's receiving the ball back to goal all the time and knocking it off. And the games where he was really, really good when he was receiving the ball on the run, facing his defender, and he killed them and scored and all the rest of it. It's about your environment. Judge them in the environment that we bought them for, and then we'll see their talent. So Elliot, your Eze shout, it works then with Rice's behind. Does that mean it works, right? So and but also the Sane shout is something I like, and the reason why I wanted to ask you the question was, I think we need people to affect the last line, not play in the pockets, to affect the last line, to run through to affect the last line. Havertz does it, Jesus pocket, Odegaard pocket, So we need, Bukayo Saka is really a creative winger that runs beyond on occasion, right? Martinelli runs through, but again, he fades sometimes. Trossard's pocket player. We need someone else that affects the back line and makes the back line think, they can come and get me for the whole 90 minutes. I better drop away. So that's what we need now. Whether that's a Gyökeres, whether that's a Sane, somebody that runs through, that can run channels, that really affects the back line. I think that's the addition I'd like to see.
Yeah, I tend not to think there's anything in the Gyökeres
Just
links,
the
but I know they've been growing.
stylistic thing.
No, but there are links
profile-wise.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you. I mean, it seems like if you look at what we're looking at, so Calafiori fits sort of what we've done. A young player with immense ceiling, huge talent, could come in an area where we have a platoon of players who can all play, and he can go try to make that position his. Mikel Merino is a little bit different. He's 28. well established, what he is, what he does. I don't think Merino is going to start 38 games for us. I don't think that's the plan. I think Merino is very much an option to do some different things, and gives us a bit of cover. But I think if we're going to do another one after that, I think it will be a ceiling raiser. I think, I know these are reductive ways to put things, but I think Merino is a floor raiser in the sense that if you look at Sambi, who didn't play at all for us last season, Vieira, who basically didn't play at all, and Smith Rowe, who wasn't really trusted and basically didn't play at all, players that have sort of midfield qualities, and you bring in a Merino, I think he will get minutes that they didn't get, and I think he will deliver a consistency and a contribution in those minutes that is Champions League level. I mean, he's played in the Champions League. He's been good in the Champions League. So I think he can do those things for us. And maybe he is a player who's brought in more with an eye towards those Champions League ties, because I think he fits that competition for us really nicely.
Yeah. And also, Elliot,
versus the Premier League.
You don't want him shutting the door on those two young kids, right? You can't bring in somebody who's going to shut the door on them, or what are we doing?
Well, that's a great point, because you bring in a 28-year-old and you say to Nwaneri, he's going to be 31 in 3 seasons. He's going to be moving on. You're going to be 20. That's your time, right? And I think that that's a path that makes a lot of sense. Now, look, Nwaneri might just be so good at 18 that that's his time. If you're good enough, you're old enough. But I think if you bring in a 23-year-old in that position, if you bring in an Eze, and you see him as a left 8, suddenly the path for Nwaneri gets a lot less clear,
and when
right?
you sit down for a contract discussion, he's not signing. Yep. Yeah, and then you think, well, we've done this to ourselves. Then there's the other aspect. People are expecting first place and first place only, right?
Bingo.
So there's that. But we want to see all the kids play as well. We don't see any of them sold. We want them all to stay and everything to look good and all our numbers to work out, right? So we can't have it all.
And it's not doable. There's a saying in American sports, flags fly forever. And it's the point that everybody wants Nwaneri to have a path to first team football. But if you offered Arsenal fans a Champions League and Premier League double this season, but Nwaneri leaves the club, I got to believe everyone would take that. And you'd rightfully take that, because while we love Nwaneri's talent, the goal isn't to develop Nwaneri. The goal is to win big trophies. So the club is constantly balancing between developing players and making paths for players, but also not doing that at the expense of what can be won in the immediate future. So we'll just see what happens there. A final couple of things super quick then. Calafiori is official. He's here. We've talked him to death, so there's very little to say, but I'm just curious any of the content around his arrival that you might want to talk about. The thing that struck me was 2 things. One, that really nice moment he had with Mikel where he's like, is this real? And he's like, it's real. He just seemed so excited to be here. But the other thing is that we've been watching him for over a year, and I think it's a reminder that, like, whatever we may think the club's plan is, there's a great degree of organization and preparation happening at the club, and the club is being run in a really efficient way right now. I'm not saying everything the club does is right. No club gets everything right. But this wasn't Mikel on his sofa watching the Euros, with a nice cold beer in his hand going, give me some of that guy. Like, this was part of a plan,
Yeah, well, there's not much more to add there. I think what struck with me actually is that he could walk him through London, going to a game, Crystal Palace, and none of us knew who he was. Walking with the Arsenal fans, and a few months later, we know all his tattoos. Do you know what I mean? And it's just so interesting. And but to the point, another thing that struck me, and it's maybe because we was out in LA as well, you realize, talking to people, you realize that we don't know everything. We think we know as fans. We think we know. I think we need to start thinking about how much we don't know, and realize that these plans are in place well in advance. And, what I've realized is just that we're probably about a year behind. They're probably starting to talk about next summer's transfers right now. Declan Rice was a year to get him in. It sounds like Calafiori was close to that, right? So while we're talking about this stuff amongst ourselves, for some of the more critical signings, I think we are in long conversations with them. It seems like it's a huge thing to plan somebody coming over, particularly in the changing countries. So yeah, it's interesting that how we're moving. I like it, Elliot. I like how we're perceived. I'm worried about the start, but let's see what happens on the Emirates Cup game. I'm going to that one, and I'll know a lot more by then.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think the thing about these tours and these prestige friendlies is, Clive, I think it pushes you into forgetting how early in the preparation the club are. You know what I mean? Like, think about it. once upon a time, these were friendlies against Vienna 11. You know what I mean? And that kind of thing. And you'd win 11-0, and half the team would be players you've never heard of. And then you'd rock up to the Emirates Cup, you'd play 2 prestige friendlies, and you'd start to evaluate things there. These tours have changed that. The very first game we played in preseason was against a Premier League team in Los Angeles. Second game's against United. Third game's against Liverpool. 62,000 fans, 70,000 fans. Like, it's easy to forget. We're in the did everyone come through uninjured and get a good run phase. And we're trying to evaluate things like, did Jesus finish well, or is Thomas Partey able to cover the ground? And like, you have to look, I'm going to contradict myself. If Arsenal are going to play a game in front of 62,000 people and put it on TV, we as fans are just going to analyze it. It's impossible not to do it. And Mikel will too, by the way. But I do think now, as the calendar ticks over to August and we play Leverkusen and Lyon at the Emirates with kickoff of the season 2 weeks away, I do think these next couple of games, especially with Rice and Saka back and Raya back, I think we'll be much more in a position to start doing the kind of analysis we've probably been early on with these games.
Yeah, I love analysing games. I love it. I do it all the time, whether people ask me to or not. I do it all the time. But then you have to do it from a place. And what is that place? You know, and same with England. Watching England, you can't just analyse like I'm watching Arsenal. It's not the same, right? When we want to watch Porto via Arsenal, different game. You have to look at this completely differently. And same for pre-season. You have to bring something else into your thought process. That's all part of the jigsaw, which is the game, right? And we're more rounded. And I'm really interested to see how we attack this season. I think almost like an analogy I'll give you, Elliot, I do a lot of walking up hills. And when you're walking up a new course, a new track or a new route, man, every time you turn a corner, it's hard because it's new, right? 2-3 times doing it, you know what? That's easier. Oh, I've gone over that hill, no problem at all, because I know the course. I'm a lot more confident this year that we know the course, and some of the things that maybe we're finding hard in our minds may not be so hard because they've done it before, you know, and they've been successful up to a point, and I know now it's about finding the extra bits to really get through, and they're building it in midfield, they're building it at the back. Elliot, my friend, I'm in your world. I'm in the front line. And I think to change people's perception of us, we need to add something to our front line, which makes people step back and think, whoa, they are serious. That's the last thing.
Yeah. And I think what might be a little frustrating for people who invest so much in transfer stories is that if that addition is out there, it might be an opportunistic one and it might take till later in the window. I accept that with our difficult start to the season, you'd like to have every player in early. That's just it's not possible. And so we're going to have to do what we do. You know, we will get some more stuff out for you shortly. We'll certainly have instant reactions after all the preseason games coming up, which contributes to my point about we overanalyze these games, but why not? What else do we have going on?
Fun, right?
It's summer. It's good fun. That's exactly right. It's good fun. And again, I'll finish on the point that I said at the start, which is I think we are all going to have to find a way to critically analyze an Arsenal that at its worst will be very good and at its best will be, you know, Champions League or Premier League winning caliber. Gone are the days where it's so obvious how we stink and we're a joke and it's easy to spot and we sit here and moan about it. But that doesn't mean we abdicate the responsibility to find areas to critique and look for improvement. And so getting that balance right, Clive, I think that's the trick this season. Not falling into the trap if we draw a game of saying, well, there goes the title and it's all gone and we're a failure. You can't do that. But finding the areas where improvement can be made. And if you're Mikel Arteta, by the way, you're pulling your hair out. Well, I hope he doesn't because he got that beautiful hair. But doing the same thing, right? Which is, how do I improve this? Look at what we did from January to May of last year. You really can't improve that much. So that's the job.
There's always
it's not easy.
There's always things. I mean, there were things last night which sort of annoyed me a little bit. I shared them with you, right? So it's, and because it stopped us playing how we normally play, right? So, you know, I touched on it earlier. It's not a fault of his, but we went back to goalkeeper far too much. Vieira had 90 plus touches. I would love to know how many of them were forward. I want to know. If you're a centre back and you're a ball playing centre back, you have the keys in your hands. Did you use them effectively? Not so sure, right? So good player, Elliot, on his left foot. I think we might have seen more on his left-hand side. So can't kill him. Do you see what I mean? Can't kill him. So pre-season minutes. Goalkeeper, just really playing 3 games in a row for the first team for the first time ever. And he's done brilliantly well. Distribution, go away and loan, son, and work on your distribution. Work on it because it's important for some of the top level teams. So can't kill him. Zinchenko, in and out, does some good things, does some bad things. I didn't learn anything there. The worry for me, the biggest worry was the lack of structure when we go to Jesus. That's the worry I walked away with. But again, he needs to get sharper, needs to find himself, get his combinations going. I thought him and Trossard did some good stuff together. And so it's very patchy pre-season where you do something good and you blow up. I don't know if you noticed in the second half of the game when we were opening midfield and Kai Havertz came storming back. Do you remember Elliot in the second half of that game? Came storming back, made a challenge, and I thought, wow, you're brilliant, you. The very next phase, I urge you to watch it. He couldn't move. They passed it straight past him, and he was done. That's pre-season. That's pre-season, and so in a game the space would have been shorter. That second phase never happened. We'd have kept the ball longer, and he just finished. He hadn't recovered yet from the big run, and so within 3 minutes he was off the pitch. That's exactly what should happen. It's hard to analyze, but you have to look really closely to analyze it effectively. And but that's why I just enjoy it. I just enjoyed it. It's really good to see the team. Really good.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, I think this is where I don't like to say bias, but I think I'll use bias, but I don't mean it in a negative connotation. But where bias seeps into the analysis, because Ben White was diabolically bad last night. Nobody cares.
He was at no one cares. We know
no one cares.
Fine. Yeah.
Because he's Ben White. We know he's fucking fantastic, and we have no concerns. So we can very easily say it's preseason. It's Ben White. Who cares?
Yeah.
But if Jesus doesn't score a goal first time, we're like, Jesus, he's just not a center forward. And we're all guilty of it, right? Because the players we have no doubts about, Gabriel, White, Odegaard, we just give them a pass on however they play because we understand it's preseason. But the players we're putting under the microscope and we have uncertainty about, we don't give them the same grace for it to be preseason. And that's not so fair.
We almost wait for them to make a mistake. So Zinchenko made a couple of errors. He got run on the goal. Everyone goes back to Anfield last year and goes, Zinchenko's done it again. But they may not remember the fact that when he was back on the last line of defence on our goal, beat 3 people, popped it out to the left, and we cross the ball in, and Odegaard does his stuff, and we score. Right? So that's a good bit of build-up from Zinchenko. But we know he can build up, but we know he can get run. What have we learned? Probably nothing. Nothing. We have to decide how much of that risk we want to take on board. Because there's a good player there in certain phases, but maybe we don't want him in the last line versus Mo Salah. But maybe we don't need to anymore. And that's the difference. We haven't got to worry. When I say he's not the future, that's probably the wrong word. We haven't got to do it. We can go to Mo Salah now and say, well, which one should we do? Should we unleash Timber on him? Or should we unleash Calafiori on him? Or should we just unleash Tomiyasu on him, who's already sorted him out once before? We can make that decision, and there are other games where Zinchenko may be fine. Not a problem.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Still time to get things together. Very excited to watch us play Bayer Leverkusen. I mean, that's going to be, I think, a high-level game. They're a very good team. Granted, Xhaka will certainly want to come back and play well, and we'll be getting closer to fitness. Do you think we'll see Saka, Rice, Raya?
I'm not sure. Trying to say that they come back end of this week, don't they? End of this week. Whether they're in at the weekend or they just come back Monday morning, I don't know. Maybe
the game's on Wednesday, so they'll get a few practices in, I would think.
Yeah. Let's see what's happening at the moment. Sessions. Your Instagrams are full of players who don't seem to take any days off. Right, so the level they are now as athletes are really taking them to a new place. And the word coming here prepared. Kai Havertz, he had one rusty 20 minutes against Bournemouth. The next game, it's like within a week, he's our best player. As simple as that. It turns very, very quickly. So we just got to give them time. Some players may not be as prepared as others, and they maybe take a bit slower. But by Lyon, I think we'll know a lot more by then. So,
yeah, I think that's right. All right, well, let's leave it there. I mean, that's plenty for now We'll let some Mikel Merino rumor stuff heat up. We'll see what happens with the Eddie and Nketiah move to Marseille, as that seems to be moving. And, if any news breaks, we'll come back and do another pod. Why not? I want to thank everyone, by the way, for bearing with me today. I am really feeling it right now. So I'm going to try to lay down, get some medicine in me, and rest and recuperate. It's still preseason for podcasters too. We're stepping up the intensity, and apparently I've broken down a little bit. So thanks for bearing with me.
The Tommy
Tim is okay. I would take that. Can I get his wage? Tim is heading to DC. He's going to be out with the women, and we'll try to get some fun stuff out about the Arsenal women and their preparation as well. So look out for that. Clive's on Twitter. Clive PFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
My name's Elliot Smith, Blackman Twitter, Yankee Gunner. We love you, and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10. Leverkusen 0.